So, if you took away every clock, every phone, and like every ticking screen in the world right now, your body would probably still panic at exactly 2 p.m. on a Tuesday.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we treat time like it's this immutable law of physics,
Mm.
like gravity, you know.
Yeah, exactly. A second clicks forward, the math is clean, and we just accept it as an indisputable fact. But what if that chronic chest tightening feeling of not having enough time is actually just a shared psychological illusion?
It is a really startling thought,
Hmm.
especially since we structure our entire society around this assumption that time is a rigid container, and we just have to frantically stuff our lives into it.
Right.
We measure it, we spend it, we waste it. But we rarely step back to look at how the actual mechanism of measuring time alters our physical experience of being alive.
Or psychological experience, really, which is exactly what we are getting into today on this deep dive. Because for anyone listening who has ever felt that, that low level sense of dread just looking at their calendar, today's source material is the perfect antidote.
For sure.
We are looking at this mesmerizing allegorical text titled When Time Looks Away from the Goddess. And it presents this magical realist town square that runs strictly, painfully on schedule.
Yeah, it's populated by these intensely anxious figures and literal walking clocks, all just trapped in this cycle of urgency.
Until a sudden mystical arrival completely rewrites the texture of their reality. So our mission today is to unpack this modern fable together and explore what it really reveals about our collective obsession with measuring our days.
Right, contrasting that frantic ticking of a clock with the deep, unhurried flow of actual lived experience.
Right.
The author uses this surreal environment as like a diagnostic tool for modern burnout.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the story drops us right into a baseline anxiety that feels, honestly, incredibly familiar. The ecosystem of this town square is wound so tight it feels like it might snap.
It really does.
We literally start with a walking alarm clock. It's described as clanging up the cobblestones on these two small brass feet.
The color of old cream. Right.
Yes, with two bells on its head like horns. And it just constantly checks itself against the central tower bell.
What's fascinating here is the motivation of that clock. The text notes that it moves with the particular anxiety of something that exists only to be heard.
Wow. Only to be heard.
Yeah, if we look at the psychology of hypervigilance, that is the perfect embodiment of an externalized stress response.
Mm.
I mean, it isn't producing anything of value. Its entire function is just to maintain a state of alarm.
And the square relies on it. Like, without that constant ringing reminder of urgency, the whole system might collapse.
Exactly.
But I have to push back here a little bit. The text explicitly states these characters arrive from different directions, and they don't know each other at all.
Right, they're total strangers.
So if they are all isolated, but they are all syncing their movements to the same walking clock and the same tower bell,
Yeah.
isn't time the one thing that is actually connecting them?
Ah, see, that is a really common trap we fall into. We confuse synchronization with connection.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, these people are operating on the same grid, absolutely, but they aren't interacting. They are entirely disconnected from one another. The only thing uniting them is their shared subordination to a schedule.
Ah, I see.
It's an assembly of people who haven't assembled on purpose.
Yeah.
They're just jointly bowing to the tyranny of the tick.
The tyranny of the tick. I love that. And the text really drives that isolation home with these dark, modern nods to Alice in Wonderland characters.
The Wonderland parallels are brilliant.
They really are. Like, we have the Hatter in this blue-green coat, the color of shallow water, and he's wearing a bow tie that is the specific red of something urgent.
Right, and he's obsessed with this ritual of pouring tea at precisely the wrong moment. Just, watching the surface go still before it moves again.
Yeah, and then the rabbit, he holds this enormous gold pocket watch in his left hand, just walking around with panic permanently lodged in his chest.
The mechanism driving the rabbit is particularly revealing, I think. The text says he was always about to have somewhere to be.
Always about to.
Yeah. That somewhere kept shifting ahead of him, like a horizon redrawing itself with every step. And psychologically, anxiety is anticipatory. It requires a future threat.
So he's just running from a threat that hasn't happened yet.
Exactly. The rabbit is exhausting himself, chasing a destination that doesn't actually exist. It's just the perpetual threat of next.
Which perfectly mirrors the everyday human characters in the square, too. There's this woman in a red shirt who is late for a meeting, and she checks her wristwatch the way you check a door you've already locked.
That is such a relatable image.
Right, and the text makes a point of saying she doesn't check it because she needs the information. She does it because the not knowing is the only thing keeping her moving.
Yeah, that is the dopamine and cortisol loop in action right there. When we are overwhelmed by the abstract concept of falling behind, our brains just crave a micro hit of certainty.
Even if the certainty is bad news.
Exactly. Looking at the watch doesn't solve her problem, but it provides a rigid number. It's this sheer momentum of anxiety masquerading as productivity.
We all do this. I mean, think about how you, the listener, interact with your phone right now. You pull it out of your pocket, swipe through a few screens without actually absorbing a single piece of information, and put it back.
Oh, totally. You aren't seeking data, you're just fueling that same compulsive loop.
Right. And there's another character, a man in a plain shirt, living his life in these rigid 4-minute intervals of barely contained alarm.
4 minutes. It's so specific.
Yeah, and a man in a blue collar who looks at his watch and just frowns, because the number on the dial suddenly makes no sense to him.
Well, when a system is wound this tightly, it becomes incredibly brittle. It cannot bend.
Yep.
Everyone is vibrating this unsustainable frequency of anticipatory stress.
Right, they're all at the breaking point.
So because it is so rigid, the introduction of a completely opposite force doesn't just cause a slight delay in their schedule. It shatters the fundamental physics of the space.
Enter the goddess. And her arrival is entirely devoid of kinetic energy. She doesn't, dramatically sweep into the square with thunder and lightning. The text says she was simply not there, and then she was, as though she had just grown up through the cobblestones.
And she wears these undyed linen robes, right?
Yeah, they're described as loose as a breath held too long and finally released.
The visual contrast is so deliberate there. You have the urgent reds and golds of the anxious characters, and then you have her. Her hair is the deep brown of river mud and old wood, materials that represent deep geological patience.
I love that phrase, geological patience.
And her hair moves as if air is passing through it from somewhere else. Plus, she bears a crescent moon on her forehead, resting there like a signature.
It's a beautiful image, but her posture is what really threw me.
How so?
Well, her eyes are closed, her hands are pressed to her chest. She isn't praying, though. The text says she is in the posture of someone listening to the prayer the world is already making. And I'm struggling with this part, to be honest. She just stands there doing absolutely nothing while everyone around her is having a full-blown panic attack. In the real world, if someone just stands completely still in a crowded, frantic intersection, they don't magically calm the crowd down. They get run over.
That's a fair point.
So how does her passive presence actually overpower a literal clanging alarm clock?
Well, this raises a really important question about the nature of power. We're conditioned to believe that you have to fight force with a stronger force.
Right, fire with fire.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But her presence acts more like an acoustic dampener in a recording studio. Think about it. An acoustic panel doesn't emit a counter sound to fight noise.
Oh, true. It just absorbs it.
Yes. It simply offers a porous, grounded void that absorbs kinetic energy until the room goes quiet. She isn't imposing a new timeline or yelling at them to slow down. She is simply absorbing their frantic projection.
So she neutralizes the panic by refusing to participate in it.
Precisely. She reveals the timelessness that was already buried underneath the cobblestones. The text notes that she possessed the square completely, not by taking it by force, but because it had always been hers.
Wow. The square just finally grew still enough to recognize it.
Yes.
The way that unraveling happens, character by character, is just fascinating to watch. The alarm clock takes 3 steps after she appears before it even registers the shift in reality.
It takes a second to catch up.
Yeah, and then it slows down. It plants its little brass feet and points its hands to a time it cannot commit to. Its bells do not ring.
So the externalized mechanism of anxiety literally loses its voice in the presence of true stillness. It has nothing to push against anymore.
And the rabbit. Oh man, that enormous gold pocket watch he's been gripping grows warm against his palm. The text describes it as feeling like a stone that has been lying in the sun.
Such a grounding physical sensation.
Right. His hands slow down to the pace of watching a river. And for the first time, his knuckles stop hurting. He actually sits down on the cobblestones and realizes that the shifting horizon he was chasing wasn't ahead of him at all. It was the ground beneath him.
Notice the transition in how time is being processed there, though. The rabbit's nervous system is finally downregulating.
Because the thread is gone.
Exactly. He is shifting from a state of mechanical measurement, the ticking watch, to elemental presence, the warmth of a stone. When the thread of the future is removed, the anticipatory anxiety loses its fuel. He is forced into the present moment.
And the other characters feel it too. The Hatter's tea stops steaming mid-gesture. His overly caffeinated eyes finally go quiet. But the everyday humans are where we really see the mechanics of this shift play out.
Oh, definitely.
The man in the plain shirt feels his agonizing 4-minute intervals completely dissolve. The text says he finds a new texture of time. It no longer moves in rigid chunks. It moves the way water moves.
Filling a shape, totally unhurried, going everywhere at once.
Right.
He is shifting from measuring time quantitatively as a resource to be managed to experiencing it qualitatively as an environment to inhabit.
Which perfectly sets up the realization of the man in the blue collar. He looks at his watch and finally understands why the number made no sense to him earlier.
Because the context had shifted.
Yeah, the text says the number was real and technically accurate, but it was a surface without any ground beneath it. Reading that, the first thing I thought of was taking off a virtual reality headset.
Wait, really? How so?
Well, think about when you have a VR headset on. The digital world you are seeing is rendering accurately according to its own internal software.
Right. It has its own logic.
Exactly. It has its own rules, its own physics, its own clock, but it is a completely closed loop floating in a void. It is entirely disconnected from the physical room you are actually standing in.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah. The man in the blue collar realizes that his watch is a VR headset. The numbers are accurate to the software of the schedule, but completely detached from physical reality.
That makes so much sense.
When he looks at the goddess, he's taking the headset off. He realizes that under every manufactured surface is something that does not tick.
That analogy gets right to the core of the allegory. The watch provides data, but it obscures reality. And once these characters take the headset off and experience this profound qualitative unraveling of time, the old operating system becomes incompatible.
Right, they can't unsee it.
Exactly. They cannot simply reboot and return to their baseline panic.
They literally can't, because then the goddess exhales. That's like the climax of the story. She breathes out, and the entire square rearranges itself around that single breath.
Angles soften.
Shadows lengthen, even though the sun hasn't actually moved in the sky. A nearby clock tower sounds a single note, but nobody even bothers to count the hour.
Because it's a sensory shift rather than a measurable one. And when the square begins to return to motion, the quality of that motion is fundamentally altered.
Yeah, the walking clock starts moving again, but much slower. And the text delivers this absolute gut punch of a line. It says it moves as though it has remembered that speed is an interpretation, not a fact.
Wow. Speed is an interpretation, not a fact. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's fascinating how much sociological truth is packed into that one sentence.
Things like,
We treat our rushed pace as an objective reality. But the necessity of speed is just a collective agreement. It is an interpretation of value, usually driven by economic or social pressures, that we have internalized so deeply we mistake it for a biological imperative.
it's wild to think about it that way. The Hatter drinks his tea, even though it has gone cold. He tastes the end of something that ran too long.
Yeah.
But I have to ask, I mean, taking off the VR headset is great in a magical town square, but in the real world, we do have places to be. We have
No.
jobs, we have families. We can't just ignore the clock entirely and sit on the cobblestone.
Oh, for sure. And the text actually addresses that. It doesn't advocate for abandoning structure or just dropping out of society completely.
Right, the spell does break.
Exactly. The goddess departs and the characters resume their days. The change isn't in what they do. It's in their internal state while doing it.
That's true. The woman in the red shirt still goes to her meeting, but she arrives completely unapologetic.
I love that detail.
The text notes that something about how she enters the room makes the people who are already seated go quiet. She brings the stillness of the square into a corporate environment. She has shifted from reacting to the pressure of time to responding from a grounded state.
And the man in the plain shirt goes an entire hour without checking his wrist. When he finally does, he finds he isn't late for anything. He discovers that he is simply located in a moment, and the moment was enough.
Located in a moment, that is so powerful. And the man in the blue collar takes a longer route home. He walks through streets he never bothered to explore, pondering how light will rest on an object for a very long time before that object even knows it is being seen.
You know, the author is showing us that the ordinary, everyday square was actually built for exactly this. The physical world is fully capable of holding an infinite, unhurried presence.
Right, it's always been there.
Exactly. We don't have to escape our lives to find stillness. We just have to stop vibrating at such a frantic frequency so we can actually perceive the space we're already in.
So what does this all mean for us? The story ends with this beautiful image of the square being emptied of its urgency, like a table after a meal. The surface is just wiped clean.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that we all have our own VR headsets strapped firmly to our faces. We all have our own walking alarm clocks.
It is a profound invitation to examine your own routines. What are the 4-minute intervals you trap yourself in? What are the locked doors you compulsively check just to maintain the momentum of your own anxiety?
We do it constantly.
The text proves that the panic isn't a requirement for living. It's just a habit.
It really is. So, to you listening today, when you catch yourself rushing for no immediate reason, try to remember the rabbit sitting on the cobblestones. Let your internal clock slow down to the pace of watching a river.
Yeah, just downregulate.
You don't always have to be chasing a shifting imaginary horizon. You are allowed to take the headset off and just be located in a moment.
I mean, it requires a radical shift in perspective to look at a clock and realize it only has as much power over your nervous system as you allow it to have.
It really does. And I want to leave you with one final image to chew on today. At the very end of the allegory, when the goddess leaves, there is nothing left to see on the ground.
Not a trace.
Right. There is no physical monument, no evidence that she was ever there. The only thing that actually changed was the perception of the people standing in the square.
Which changes everything.
Exactly. So if our agonizing, chest-tightening perception of time is truly just an interpretation and not a fact, what other rigid rules governing your life right now are actually just shared illusions? What other overwhelming pressures might simply vanish with a single exhale?
That is certainly something to evaluate the next time you feel the urge to check your watch.
Take a breath and take off the headset. Until next time, we'll see you on the next Deep Dive.